Rome, 70 AD. An empire in chaos, looking for a distraction. Vespasian had a plan. Give the land Nero stole back to the people. The catch? Nero had built a private lake here. It was a giant bowl of mud.
Building a 50,000-seat stadium on top of a lake sounds like madness. But for Rome, this wasn't just construction, it was a political statement.
The funding. The spoils of the siege of Jerusalem. Blood money for a blood sport. A1. Draining the lake. To build on a lake, you first have to make it vanish. Engineers diverted the water into the city's ancient sewer, the Cloaca Maxima. They dug an annular drain to catch the runoff from the hills. This was the first line of defense against the swamp. But the ground was treacherous. Saturated clay is heavy, unstable, and unforgiving.
If these drains fail, the Colosseum sinks. It's the most important part of the engineering you will never see.
The foundation, a massive, elliptical ring of concrete 40 feet deep. Next problem. How do you move an entire mountain of stone into the heart of a crowded city? Travertine limestone, the white gold of Rome. 20 miles away in Tivoli, moving these blocks was a battle against gravity. It took 2,000 oxen pulling non-stop to keep the supply line moving.
They didn't just move stone, they built a dedicated superhighway for it. This was 20 miles of non-stop, heavy-duty logistics.
This wasn't built brick by brick. It was an exoskeleton of stone. These massive H-frames would carry the weight of the entire stadium. To make the building earthquake-proof, they used iron clamps. They poured molten lead into the joints to fuse the metal to the stone. The stones aren't held by cement. They are clamped by 300 tons of iron.
See these ugly holes everywhere? Scavengers in the Middle Ages hacked into the walls to steal the irons for weapons.
Organization was the key. Rome wasn't just building a stadium, they were running a factory. The Roman secret. Pozzolana. Pozzolana. This volcanic ash was the miracle ingredient. Mixed with lime, it created a cement. This was the engine of the empire. The Polis Bastos. A treadmill crane that turned human footsteps.
Level 1 is finished. It's incredible up here. But the real engineering, the secret heart of this machine...
In the early years, the Colosseum did something impossible. It turned into an ocean. 2 scaled-down Roman warships, triremes, floating right where gladiators would normally bleed.
They called it the Naumachia. Real naval battles in the middle of a stadium. This was the pinnacle of Roman entertainment.
It took 7 hours of non-stop flow from the aqueducts to fill this bowl with millions of gallons. This was the ultimate spectacle. But for the engineers, it was a logistical nightmare. Draining it was faster. They could go from sea battle to gladiator fight in just 2 hours. Year 81 AD. Emperor Domitian wanted more efficiency. He ended the sea battles and built the Hypogeum. A permanent masonry labyrinth was constructed. The ocean was traded for a factory of death.
Welcome to the basement. 2 levels of cages, tunnels, and mechanical wonders. This is where the magic and the terror began.
This was the world's first backstage. 28 freight elevators, all powered by muscle. 8 men per lift. Their muscles were the only motors Rome had to bring the spectacle to life. The animals didn't walk into the arena. They materialized from the ground, a magic trick designed to terrify the crowd. This was a high-stakes machine. One frayed rope, and the magic became a lethal catastrophe for everyone below. Imagine being a gladiator. You're in the dark, and suddenly, a trapdoor opens, and a lion appears behind you. Every machine has an exhaust. This was the Libertinarian Gate. The smell was unbearable. A mix of wild animals, sweat, and open sewers. To keep the basement from flooding during a storm, they built a massive perimeter drain. It acted like a moat. Between shows, an army of laborers fought a constant battle against the filth, washing the corridors clean for the next wave of performers.
There was even a private tunnel for the emperor. He could enter without ever seeing the commoners.
Above the chaos and the stench, 50,000 Romans were screaming for blood. To understand the Colosseum, you have to understand Roman power. And that started with where you sat. Roman society was tiered. The higher you sat, the poorer you were. Your seat was your status. The front row was for the elite. Marble seats, reserved by name, and air-conditioned by small, scented water fountains. The design was so efficient it's still used in stadiums today. 50,000 people could exit this entire building in just 15 minutes.
From up here, the emperor looks like an ant, but we're still missing the roof. Let's look up.
But the most incredible engineering feat was at the very top. A roof made of fabric.
See these stone brackets? They're like giant hands. They supported 240 wooden masts.
This wasn't a job for builders. To operate a roof this complex, they called in the elite of the Imperial Navy. It took synchronized precision to pull miles of rope and lock the masts into place. One slip, and the tension could be lethal. Valerium, a massive canvas awning that shaded 80% of the audience. It was the world's first retractable stadium roof. A giant rope ring floated in the center to keep the fabric taut against the wind. It was the heart of the system. The sudden gale catches the massive linen sheets, placing unimaginable stress on the wooden masts and rigging high above the Colosseum.
If the wind caught this wrong, it could pull the top of the stadium right off. It took 1,000 sailors to manage this much weight.
The engineering was precise. The fans stayed cool, but the gladiators stayed in the light, exactly where the crowd wanted them. To understand the top, you have to understand who wasn't allowed at the bottom. This was the level for the forgotten. To save weight and money, the highest level was built from timber. It was the only part of the stadium that could actually burn. Every single beam had to be hauled up manually. There were no shortcuts, just thousands of steps and pure human grit. The architecture of segregation. The design was so precise that the rich and the poor never had to cross paths, even when entering the same building.
Vomitorium comes from the Latin word vomere, to spew out. It's how the stadium vomited 50,000 people out in minutes after a show.
It wasn't just gray stone. This was a palace of color and plaster, designed to dazzle the senses even before you reached your seat. Every spectator had a ticket, a piece of pottery with a number on it. To manage 50,000 people, the entry had to be flawless. Look above the arches. Those numbers were your guide. They've been there for 2,000 years, telling Romans exactly where to go. Your ticket wasn't paper, it was a piece of broken pottery. If you didn't have your tessera, you weren't getting past the gate.
Even back then, you couldn't just sit anywhere. Everything was organized. Kuptalz was organized.
The finishing touch, a skin of gleaming white marble. To the ancient world, it didn't look like a ruin, it looked like a mountain of light. 8 years of blood and sweat. 1 million blocks of stone. The Flavian amphitheater is ready. It's 80 AD. The gates are about to open for the 100-day inaugural games. Let's see it in action. Opening day, 80 AD. The excitement in Rome is bordering on a riot.
50,000 people inside in under 20 minutes. Modern stadiums still use this exact Roman blueprint.
Emperor Titus knows his legacy depends on these 100 days of games. The first morning hunt. The arena floor is covered in trees and rocks brought up overnight. Between shows, the Hypogeum was a high-speed construction site. A massive elevator lifting a full-sized artificial mountain through a trapdoor.
The pressure was immense. If a lift failed during the show, the engineer was often sent into the arena as punishment.
The 28 lifts allowed for shock and awe, predators appearing from nowhere. The environmental cost was staggering. Entire species were wiped out from North Africa. The word arena comes from arena, the Latin word for sand, used to soak up the blood. The sailors start to unfurl the velarium.
It just dropped the temperature by 15 degrees. 2,000 years before air conditioning.
Mist machines. They sprayed saffron-scented water to keep the elite smelling fresh. The dry pine wood of the summer cavea caught instantly. In 80 AD, a fire in the crowded upper tiers was the greatest fear. Roman vigils, firefighters, rushing up the narrow stairs with vinegar-soaked blankets.
They had a complex system of lead pipes and cisterns just for fire emergencies.
The schedule was rigid. Hunts in the morning, executions at lunch, gladiators at night. As the sun set, the gate of life opened for the winners, and the gate of death for the losers.
The games were a success, but the Colosseum's hardest days weren't in the arena. They were in the earth itself.
Yeah. In 217 AD, the unthinkable happened. Lightning struck the wooden upper tiers.
The stone didn't burn, but the wooden interior became a furnace. The heat was so intense it cracked the travertine pillars.
The structural integrity was compromised. The invincible stadium was closed for 20 years. It took multiple emperors and decades of labor to bring it back to life.
You can still see the scars. They had to use cheaper brick and repurpose stone to finish the job quickly.
The stadium's greatest weakness was its location. Half was on solid ground, half on soft clay. Because of the soft soil, the southern side shook harder. The stadium began to tilt and crack.
This is the moment the perfect circle was broken. The southern wall eventually collapsed, giving us the lopsided look we see today.
They didn't have modern steel. They used gravity and mass to hold the remaining walls in place. Every repair was a race against the next tremor. The empire was falling. The money was gone. The crowds were disappearing.
The machine of death finally ran out of fuel, but the building's life as a stadium was over. Its life as a city was beginning.
It became a fortress, a shopping mall, and a residential neighborhood. The blood-soaked sand became holy ground. They built a chapel right in the center. The Colosseum became the city's quarry. The marble that once shaded emperors now builds the Vatican.
It's a miracle it survives at all. It was picked apart piece by piece for 500 years.
But even broken, the giant refused to fall. Next, the 10,000-year plan. The prized Carrara marble, once a symbol of opulence, is violently scavenged by laborers.
For centuries, this place was Rome's hardware store. If you needed a church or a palace, you just took the stone from here.
The 300 tons of iron clamps that held the stones together were melted down for weapons. In 1749, the looting finally stopped. The Pope declared it a site of Christian martyrdom. It wasn't archaeology that saved it. It was religion, the first true engineering rescue. They built massive brick wedges to keep the tilting walls from falling.
This brick wall is a 19th century crutch. Without it, the entire eastern outer ring would have collapsed in the next tremor.
As the dirt came out, the secrets of the killing machine were finally revealed.
They found the main drain leading to the Tiber. After a millennium, it was still clear of debris.
Decades of car exhaust had turned the white giant black. Laser cleaning brought back its original glow. The greatest modern threat? The subway. Rome's Metro Line C passes just meters away.
The building is breathing. Every time a train passes, the Colosseum vibrates. Engineers use this data to prevent new cracks.
Modern chemicals are now the iron clamps of the 21st century. In 2021, Italy began a $22 million project to give the Colosseum its floor back. A modern version of Domitian's original design, built for tourists, not gladiators.
For the first time in 1,500 years, you can stand where the gladiators stood and look up at the crowd.
The machine is no longer for killing. It's a testament to survival.
It is the greatest machine ever built for the worst reasons. And that makes it the most human building on Earth.
If you want to see how we built the ancient world, join us on our next journey. Hit subscribe.